Glorious and powerful morning. Good morning? Well, the conditions for Ukrainians staying abroad are getting much worse. Apparently, this is being done to save their own money. Charity begins at home. And let's get started right away. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and let's see what we have here. Look, Ukrainians in Poland have been left without free housing. Our journalists are asking who is at risk of ending up on the street. It turns out that since July 1st, Ukrainians have lost the right to live for free in temporary accommodation centers. Now they have to rent housing on their own or move into private apartments. The new rule will hit hardest those who cannot work: elderly people, people with disabilities, and pregnant women. So this is not only about bringing back those who can supposedly benefit Europe without any military actions, but also those who cannot contribute, and by default they are the ones who consume most of the funds allocated for refugees. He says that the Polish authorities say the changes are intended to reduce the financial burden. Over 4 years, Polish taxpayers have spent about 40 billion zlotys supporting around 1 million Ukrainian refugees. This law is supposed to encourage Ukrainians either to return home or to support themselves if they want to stay. But thousands of vulnerable people who are unable to earn a living are affected. Here's an example right away. 74-year-old Konstantin Kostetsky and his 70-year-old wife Vera. The couple says they lived under Russian occupation in Kupiansk for 8 years, but they couldn't leave until now, and now they've been given free accommodation. And if the Polish authorities don't come up with anything, it looks like they'll be sent back. And what do they do with temporarily displaced persons in Ukraine? They take them out of dangerous places and then leave them to fend for themselves. So they say Ukrainians are left to their own devices. If they took you out by bus, after that you're on your own. But that's how it is. The state has no money for people, only for drones, not for people. So you can imagine what pensioners are supposed to do. Nothing. Honestly, I don't know what you can do in such a situation. Then they talk about a 30-year-old woman, but these are all just cases, and 30-year-old Yulia Ogarkova from Dnipro together with her husband is raising 6 children. The couple is expecting their 7th child soon. Both of them work and are ready to pay rent, but they faced another problem. Polish landlords do not want to rent them housing. When you try to rent an apartment and say that you are Ukrainian, they just hang up on you. And when you mention that you have 6 children, that doesn't help either. Well, actually, that's really true here. I don't know about pensioners, but I live in Spain, and as my acquaintances told me, when it comes to children, when you call somewhere, first of all, you have to provide a mountain of different documents, because Spanish authorities and Spanish landlords are afraid of so-called ocupas, those who illegally occupy your apartment or house. Secondly, if you have 6 children, whether the parents can keep an eye on them so they don't destroy the apartment is also a real concern. In short, the situation is getting worse, and what will happen next in Poland is still unknown. But the most interesting thing is that all this happened after a powerful Vladimir Alexandrovich, known as Sanich among the people, started awarding all sorts of figures from different legions there. Ukrainian titles, Hero of the UPA, and well, those infamous ones, basically all those heroes the Poles remember all too well, and the Poles don't like it. Right now the conflict is escalating and nothing good will come of it. Even a freak like Kaczynski suddenly appeared. I haven't shown him to you in a long time, and here's what he says.
We just need to say goodbye to this idea. First of all, we will never be accepted into the European Union. That's obvious. Goodbye.
Kaczynski suddenly, well, tanned, obviously, that's the most interesting part. And by the way, he also said that the highest honor for a Ukrainian man is to die at the front, not in a retirement home, let's say, in a nursing home, in a puddle of his own urine. Sorry, those aren't my words, those are his words. For some reason, he himself is not at the front, so apparently he is still counting on those very homes. But no matter how much of a freak he is, he says that Ukraine should give up its dream of joining the European Union.
As long as Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and several other countries are in the European Union, we won't be part of it.
Kaczynski appears to support only Ukraine joining the European Union. I don't know what Kaczynski is thinking or how he reasons, but it seems to me that he has already thrown out at least 5 countries from there, maybe even more. That is, there should currently be 27 countries in the European Union. Apparently he's sticking with the Baltic states, but then there will be 4 countries and that will be a very powerful organization. Supranational, so to speak. Wonderful. Korczynski always surprises.
They should be the first to leave, but we are already doing a lot of unpleasant things to ourselves because of a dream that will never come true, so we need to say goodbye to this dream.
Well, that's how it is. By the way, one of Korczynski's virtues is that he doesn't use profanity. At least in what I broadcasted from his videos, there was no profanity. Secondly, he formulates his thoughts relatively smoothly. Sometimes there's no real meaning in those thoughts, but the sentences are put together from individual words just beautifully. And this is something all those barbershop heroes like Tolstolobik, Ukiles, and the rest should learn from. You create a smooth thought that lacks real meaning, but at least you don't feel ashamed in the studio. You speak beautifully, and here there's even some meaning. So you see how wonderful and powerful all of this is. Several countries would have to leave the European Union for Ukraine to join. Apparently, Korczynski doesn't know that countries have to contribute certain funds to the European Union. That is, once again, it's about taxpayers' money, and there aren't that many taxpayers in Ukraine. And it also uses funds, not from Ukrainian taxpayers, but from the European Union. And in general, there's a kind of recursion here, which is extremely interesting. I recommend thinking about it. Well, let's move on for now. What do we have next here? Social benefits for Ukrainians in Europe are being reduced. Germany remains the most generous, but the conditions have become stricter. On July 1st, just like in Poland, there is a problem with providing free housing there. A new rule for providing social assistance to the unemployed has come into effect in Germany. This also applies to Ukrainians with temporary protection. Instead of the Bürgergeld system, a new model with a name that's hard for me to pronounce is gradually being introduced. I don't know German, so please excuse me. No, I won't embarrass myself. Basically, it involves stricter control over benefit recipients and puts more emphasis on quick employment. This was reported by Deutsche Welle. Changes in Germany in general are already underway, and there won't be anything good for Ukrainian benefit recipients. German job centers, among other things, will thoroughly check the financial situation of benefit recipients, including their savings and housing expenses. Plus, the principle of priority employment is coming back. If a person is able to work, they will first be offered a job and only then training or retraining. This should have been done a long time ago. So, if you arrive in a fancy car, rent a luxurious house, and suddenly demand Bürgergeld, that's something a German should really think about. An official should question what's happening, but usually they didn't consider it initially. And here I would say that both laziness and apparently the desire to help play a role. That is, you see a person who comes to you and says, I have problems. And you, being a German, say that yes, okay, we will help, of course, despite all the difficulties of the bureaucratic process. And they really did help. Many people, not just Ukrainians, took advantage of this. I should mention that's not unusual. Anyway, what immediately comes to mind is, and I think I've mentioned it once before, a cartoon from a magazine called Crocodile, a Ukrainian edition, I don't remember exactly, before the collapse of the Soviet Union. As a child, I loved browsing magazine collections in the library, and one really stuck with me. This was already during the collapse of the Soviet Union, and in Ukraine, it had collapsed, and in Ukraine they were introducing subsidies for socially vulnerable groups. Vulnerable segments of the population. Well, and they showed a picture there when at some fund where they give out these social payments for rent or something else, some woman arrives with diamonds, a fur coat, a Mercedes 600. You remember that, right? If you remember, give a like for those Mercedes 600s. And the pensioners sitting on the bench look and say, well, yeah, apparently that's the person who needs social assistance the most. A little digression, it's about the same in Germany. So, untroubled Germans, let's put it that way, who've never experienced such problems, suddenly see people arriving in cars like that and saying, we need assistance. We're here, yes, give us assistance. Now, the situation is apparently changing. Then the next thing is that it turns out Ukraine is also demanding from the countries where Ukrainians are under temporary protection payment so that these Ukrainians can return. This is, well, just lovely, absolutely lovely, let's put it that way. And this is being demanded by the human rights ombudsman, whose name is Lubenets. After much thought, Lubenets came to the conclusion that the government's policy on protecting the rights of displaced persons has failed. He says the following: the European Union should allocate funds for Ukrainian refugees with temporary protection status so that they could buy housing in Ukraine and return home to live. Well, can you imagine? So, for example, let's say, hypothetically, Germany, or let's say the Czech Republic or Poland, which really did take in millions of Ukrainians, and Germany, by the way, as well. Now, besides calculating the costs for Ukrainians, they also have to think about it. Oh, so this hypothetical Mykola Chevasil has to return home? I don't even know by what principle, and let's pay for his apartment in Ukraine. Let's say somewhere in the center of Kyiv, how much is it? 150,000 bucks, maybe 300,000. Let's pay for an apartment in Ukraine. That's a great idea. Our taxpayers will be all for it. Honestly, I'm extremely surprised by this line of thinking from Lubenets, who is suggesting things like this. It's one thing when there are assistance programs to help Ukrainians return to Ukraine by paying for tickets, and they allocate 1,000 euros or 2,000 or however much. But here he's suggesting buying housing in Ukraine at the expense of European taxpayers again. And here an immediate question arises. These European taxpayers, well, they're always paying taxes. Are they really willing to pay for all this? Lubenets says, he specifies the amount, meaning it should exceed 10 to 12,000 euros. I don't know about that. You could only buy a doghouse for some dog named Serko with a secret name for that amount. Or maybe a house somewhere in a remote village where, again, those same manhunters are always lurking around. I mean former military personnel who are now TCC officers. Well, I don't know what to say about that. They say the following: if you've lost everything in the temporarily occupied territory and you don't know where you'll live or work, you won't return to Ukraine. It's safer in Europe. I mean, at least there's some temporary support there. Here, again, I can only repeat what I said before. Absolutely all the Ukrainians I know who came to Ukraine, Spain, are all doing something. They're all working. No one there. Well, in Spain, first of all, there's no help at all. None, that's one thing. And secondly, they're all doing their own thing. Some have opened fairly large companies, like construction companies, for example. Someone who was a specialist in manicures, eyebrows, and all that, first was part of some kind of shared business that did all this, and then opened their own nail salon. And I have an acquaintance who later took out a loan from a Spanish bank and opened a manicure and pedicure salon, you know, those beauty salons. And they paid off the loans, and now they have their own expensive salons. Without any help from parents or any extra payments, as they say. And Lubenets is here. He says, in general, it's extremely strange. Then he says that Ukrainians can't return home because there is no government support program. If there was such a program, everything would be great, and again, that means European taxpayers have to pay for all of this. And here again, the same question arises. Why the hell does a European taxpayer need this? I mean, first of all, let's take Germany, for example. So in 2022, German volunteers were meeting Ukrainians at the train station. They accompanied them to centers, helped them there, provided some housing where they could live. Of course, it wasn't permanent, it was temporary. They paid for appliances and some household needs. And now they're being told, why don't you also pay so that Ukrainians can pay and buy themselves an apartment in Ukraine when they return? What? What's going on with Lubenets? What is he even thinking about? What are these strange ideas? Did he dream this up, or what's happening? Nevertheless, in Germany itself, there are already people who are absolutely willing to spend hundreds of millions of euros on Ukraine's needs. Just take a look at this magnificent handshake. Honestly, I was already thinking all sorts of things, but no, it's just the joyful faces of two leaders. Which leaders? That's Merz and Zelensky. Pekta Pertagonos Merz called after the Russian strikes on Kyiv and confirmed that Ukraine can count on Germany's support. After that, Zelensky, looking at him gratefully, confirmed that they were talking about air defense missiles and the situation at the front. This is despite the fact that there aren't that many air defense systems left in Germany itself. And nothing good is on the horizon for the working people there either. For example, the Chinese could now buy out Volkswagen. Do you remember who founded it? If you don't remember, please look it up on the internet. I won't go into details here so that YouTube doesn't decide to impose some unpleasant sanctions. On top of that, Merz stated that Ukraine can count on Germany's support in the future. They stated the following: the president thanked the chancellor for Germany's support, particularly in the area of air defense. And the chancellor confirmed that Ukraine can count on Germany's continued support. I think that's just wonderful. Write in the comments what you think, dear viewers, especially those of you who live in Germany. And that's not all. If you thought that was all the support being provided to Ukraine, it's not. There's also NATO, a small organization with trillion-dollar budgets that is about to announce new military aid to Ukraine. According to news agencies, at the NATO summit in Ankara, it will be announced that Kyiv will receive 140 billion euros for military needs in 2026 and 2027. This is in addition to those 90 billion that were provided by the European Union. 32 countries also intend to confirm their commitment to Article 5 of the NATO treaty. This is the most mythical article that always comes up everywhere and in all sorts of media twists and turns. That's just wonderful. Well, now let's take a look at some powerful leaders, because after such powerful conclusions and all sorts of interesting sources of information, it's impossible not to appreciate them. For example, Zelensky, who says the following:
And for this, I respect the whole world. And every pure heart in the world expects only one thing from Ukraine: that we will overcome this Russian scum. Well, I think even those who don't know Ukrainian
understood that this is an insult used by diplomats from Kryvyi Rih. And here again, it's worth remembering that there seems to be talk about some kind of peace or truce between Ukraine and Russia. And here, this creates a sharp contrast with our hopes that the war will end as soon as possible. Then there's another character who talks about, let me put on my power glasses here so this ionizing radiation doesn't get through. And this character in an embroidered shirt and glasses, here are the glasses, the power you require. It didn't get through. This ionizing radiation with eyebrows done at the barbershop. Apparently he's saying that a tactical nuclear strike by Russia on Ukraine is a good thing. You might think I've lost my mind. No, that's really how it is. Live on air. With this well-known Masi Masichuk, who's like Skobiva but in Ukraine, she's saying that a tactical nuclear strike on Ukraine is a good thing. He's a Ukrainian who's in favor of it. Well, you can see what's going on here.
A positive scenario for Ukraine, not a negative one, no matter how terrible it sounds. You even modeled this. Yes, we modeled this too. This would accelerate the end of the war and the collapse of Russia.
Subtitles by Alexei Dubrovsky. So if a tactical nuke is used on Ukraine, then Russia will collapse. That's an extremely interesting thought from this embroidered shirt character who thinks in categories. I don't even know what kind. What is this? What's even going on? Write in the comments what you think about this.
As soon as Russia actually starts carrying out these threats and promises, it will be the final end of Russia as a state.
Well, that's how it is. So, nuclear weapons against Ukraine are seen as a good thing. And it's not just someone like Medvedev saying this, the one who virtually bombs Ukraine every day. I think by now he's already using strategic weapons, dropping not just nuclear bombs, but even nuclear submarines right onto Kyiv. But, well, that's a joke, of course, but here's a Ukrainian who talks like this. The first time, honestly, I couldn't believe it. I listened again, thinking maybe I misunderstood something, maybe something's wrong. No, it's exactly like that. So that's how it is, dear viewers. Write in the comments what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye, everyone.
The war isn't over. It won't end just by looking around while walking down the street. Join the ranks of Lavdos and make a choice for yourself. Do you see your future in Ukraine, or do you want to end up who knows where?